Thank you, Jerry. Good afternoon and welcome to another wonderful Rotary meeting of Jonesboro Rotary Club. Beautiful day outside. I hope some of you have been able to enjoy it. I've been in meetings all morning, so when I stepped outside, it was a very pleasant surprise. But we're certainly glad to have you here, and at this time I'm going to ask Oscar if he will lead us in our invocation.
Service above self. Open our eyes that we may see. Open our ears that we may hear. Touch our hearts that we may love. Clear our minds that we may think. Strengthen our hands that we may work. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. And I believe our sergeant at arms has left the building, not in the same sense of Elvis, but anyway.
John can do it.
You want me to?
Okay, thank you, John.
Well, you're welcome. Oh, Van's got it?
Van's got it.
Van's got it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
All right.
Sorry, Van.
Following orders. Okay, thank you, President Morris. Today we have some very special guests. David Spivey, you have a special guest today.
Yeah, I think most people in here know John Hockaday. John recently retired from being a pro golfer, and now he's purchased WFJA, WWGP, and he's got his, he's up to here right now with the radio station, but he's a prospective member, so let's welcome him.
And Margaret got that special award the other night, too.
Yes, she did.
Radio station personality. Thanks, John. Thanks for coming. Love to have you in the club. Okay, got a couple more guests, but they're our program, so we're going to delay that till they get introduced. But do you have any visiting Rotarians today? How about any announcements? Neil, you got something for us?
Just a reminder, March 9th is the Rise Up Against Hunger at the Lee County Fairgrounds, the Lions Building. I won't send the thing around today, but I'll send it around again at the end of the last meeting of the month, just to remind everybody so you can sign up. It's a lot of fun. If you've never done it in the past, it goes fast. You come for 2 hours and you work, it goes fast, and it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And it's for a great cause.
It is. It's fantastic. It's a ton of fun. I'll be there early. Get me as much as I can. How about any other announcements coming?
So I just want to say this Saturday night, Tuesday Night Music Club, featuring two of our distinguished Rotarians, will be performing at the brewery. So if you're available, please come check it out. Saturday night, beginning at 7 to 9:30, 10 o'clock. David and Robert will be involved.
As long as you're throwing money in the tip jar, we'll be
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. You gotta love those guys. All right. Any other announcements? How about some brags? Anybody got something there? Yeah, Oscar. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You'll do the brag, I'll do the announcement. I don't know. The announcement is March 7th, Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. is our International Culture Night at the Civic Center. If it's okay, I'll be sending an email to pass around. 20 plus countries will be represented, or the students in the English programs in Sanford. Please join us.
Thank you, Oscar. How about any other announcements? Kate?
Oh, yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
I had a brag.
Great. Go for it.
This month, I have been in Sanford 22 years.
Kate, that is wonderful. Yes, sir. Mr. Charles.
I'd like to brag, before he even stands up, I'd like to brag on our speaker today. Let you all know that he is a diligent and faithful worker at CUOC, which is an organization that we support.
Gary.
I don't know what I've done good in life, but I'm going to brag. I'm in the presence today of my next Attorney General when I become president, and my amigo friend, and Dr. Bud, and my hero, Dr. McConville. All in one table.
Well said, well said. Okay, anybody else?
Man, I got one.
Okay, yeah, what you got, Debbie?
Chad Spivey Insurance. I was supposed to, he gave me the suggestion of what I needed to do to handle my home insurance a couple weeks ago, and, you know, I procrastinated, well, really, about 3 weeks ago, I procrastinated a little bit. Really needed to do it last week. Some of y'all know, I was in the hospital for all last week, and I needed my insurance done by Tuesday of this week. And so Monday I'm calling him and we're doing all this stuff really quick, and he was in Pittsburgh, he wasn't even here. He has just been awesome since I've moved here. So I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Chad.
So it's all about service, right? Yep. Okay, anybody else got anything they want to brag on today?
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, hey, let's give Yvonne a big round of applause for that wonderful dessert bag. Hey, don't let her take that thing home. Eat it up, double up, whatever. Get yourself some dessert. Back to you, President.
Thank you. A couple announcements here. This was up here when it came. The CUOC Board invites you to dine with us, volunteer appreciation and 15th anniversary celebration. You and your guests are invited to join the Board of Directors, staff, for the 50th anniversary celebration, date Friday, March 15, 2019, 2019, 6 o'clock at the Sanford Contractors Training Facility. I don't know how many this includes for, as far as, you know, from Jonesboro Rotary, but I imagine if any of us, you know, want to attend that, we certainly can. And
Do you happen to know where that training facility is?
yeah, as you're going toward Tobacco Road, you know, where you turn to go Tobacco Road.
Rocky Fork Church Road.
On the right.
Rocky Fork Church Road, in between the Convenience Center and US 1.
Oh, okay.
Easy to find, real easy to find.
Not Rocky Fork.
Tobacco Road's a good locator.
I changed my mind, I don't know. But anyway, just want to invite you to that. And also, I have not had anyone approach me. We have 2 tickets, each one for a couple, for the Jonesboro Rotary Club Gala, which is this Friday evening, I believe it is. Saturday evening, I stand corrected.
Are we doing that again this year?
Saturday evening, and we have received the swap tickets or whatever, so just remember, if any of you are interested, there's 2 sets of tickets available, and please let me know. The only reason we're trying to do it this way is so 5 of you won't show up and try to get in there. But anyway, that is this Saturday night, and if you want to go, we'd be glad to have you. Rotarians in Area 10, there will be a Rotary Leadership Institute seminar in Thomasville on Friday, April the 5th. And you would need to sign up for it. And so just, David, you have any thoughts on that or comments on that? You've been to probably several.
Well, it's a good, I'm gonna try to go to that one.
Okay.
It's you take it in 3 parts. I'm just only taking the first part.
Okay.
I want to go. If anybody's interested, we can carpool that day.
Sounds good. Sounds good. In just a minute, Ed's going to introduce our guest speaker, but I want you to remember there's no meeting next Tuesday at lunchtime, but when will we meet next Thursday at lunchtime, but when will we meet next Thursday?
8:30.
8:30 at CUOC. We'll do our round the table routine.
In t-shirts.
Do what?
In t-shirts.
In sneakers.
T-shirts.
T-shirts. In t-shirts, we'd like to get a picture of that. We certainly would. So wear your Rotary t-shirt, and we'll go round the table for an hour, and then if you get too dizzy, we'll try to reverse it or whatever. But and then next week, the 28th, our next meeting, I should say, 28th, we'll have a representative here from the Fayetteville Woodpeckers, and that's not a forestry club. That's a Houston Astros baseball minor league team or whatever, and he'll come and tell us about the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. Wouldn't surprise me, we do have a couple of giveaways to do, so we're looking forward to that.
I
Any other thing coming for Rotary?
just
just wanted everybody to remember the performance of the temple starts today at 2 o'clock. But Peggy Haphorn, our own Peggy, is one of the stars in that.
Oh.
And so Peggy is very good, very professional, very funny.
She's okay. That's not good.
She's
This is on tape, Jacob. You're on YouTube.
Excellent.
What's the name of the performance?
Boeing.
Boeing, Boeing. And read the review of it in the newspaper there, a couple of days ago. It promises to be a very entertaining time, so I hope we will all support that. Anything else? Okay, Ed, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you for an introduction of our speaker, if you would.
Okay, some of you, or maybe quite a few, remember Dan Combs when he was here a little over a year ago to talk about NASA. Dan is a volunteer. He's got about 120 hours of training. We'll have it online about NASA. He stays up to date on what's happening. I asked him today if he would talk to us about future projects, things that are going to be happening in the future. And this is his wife, Cynthia Combs. She's our guest today also.
Like you said, my name is Dan Combs, I'm a volunteer for NASA. This past January, I have been a volunteer for 2 years. Now, what does that mean to me? NASA considers me not to be a spy once I volunteer for a 2-year period. There's lots of money and knowledge to be gained with insider information, and they can see, well, Dan's talked at a bunch of places, he's been to every training session and so forth, and more than likely he's not a spy. I can now get in NASA facilities beyond the visitor center, which is good, very, very good for me. Sometimes, like, they might invite me up to Langley if they have an event there. Or I was invited the other day to go out to California to the open house in May, which is a big, big event, 20,000, 30,000 people show up. But seeing a volunteer, I have to pay for airfare, motel, rental car, and all my meals. I like being a volunteer, but not that much. That's a boatload of money out of your pocket. Yeah, go ahead. This is my Beale Review spacecraft. That's new. That'll take us to Mars, and the Moon. Is the Orion spacecraft built by Lockheed Martin, and goes through some of the features that it has. Go ahead, Charles. Okay, it has a backup system if something goes wrong. I will get more into that on the next slide. One of the big drawbacks, being up in space is, radiation and being covered for that. They have extra radiation protection. The outer skin, of the Orion craft, is more protected against radiation. Thermostat set at 72 degrees. We only set ours at home at 62 degrees to keep the heat bills down. And it has a system to clean out the heat during when they do exercise. Charles. Okay, back in October, going up the International Space Station out of Kazakhstan, they had a rocket failure. This was on the news, it was in the newspaper and so forth, and hey, everybody's okay. Now, it was on the major network television, the newspapers. Well, how did they get out of there so easily? What happened on that? And then none of the media had explained that. They have a launch abort system, or the Russians use launch escape system. Now, what happens there? They had a rocket failure, I think it was 2 minutes, 45 seconds, after the launch. On the back of the capsule, they have a large motor that they will ignite, and then it will separate it from the main rocket. At this time, they had to take a little bit of a tumble, and the parachutes deploy, and then they're safe. And that's how it was worked. I think this only been done twice. There was one back in the 80s by the Russians, and I think the rocket actually blew up on the launch pad, but they were able to use it. So in space history, hey, this has come through twice. Now, beyond the initial takeoff and launch, there's not much else, but we do have a backup system, that we have, Russians have, so forth. Go ahead, Charles. New coming up, this will be done in the 2020s, continually orbiting space platform called Gateway. First off, this was our initial idea by the United States. September 2017, then the Russians wanted to join in. Then let time pass, then the Japanese, the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency all wanted to join in. Which, it's nice doing something ourselves, but that money comes from somewhere. So if you get all these agencies pulling together with their money, the better off you are. It's less tax dollars, less explaining, going through the Senate and Congress and trying to get the money to pull something off like this. So we'll see what comes about on that. The more people you get involved, hey, the better off we are with money. This is just a concept of...
Dan, on your previous slide, you had Russian cosmonaut on the moon.
Vladimir Putin put out an objective some many months back that they wanted to put a person on the moon, land a cosmonaut there. There has been some reluctancy by the head of Roscosmos that they didn't want to play second fiddle with everybody else. And that's kind of like why I just passed that up. But whether Putin still wants to do that and be a part of that, the landing part of we'll get to the landing part, back on the moon. We'll have this deep space gateway there, but are we and other countries going to pool our money together to go land back on the moon? We'll see.
Can we nominate Putin to go to the moon?
That's one of the biggest questions. Yeah, we're going to go back to the moon. Are we going to land on the moon? I've heard all sorts of answers. I've gotten dead silence, asking NASA people on this question. It just, is it all going to happen? Seems like if you're going to build the gateway and have it going around the moon, that, hey, yeah, we'll go back down and land. But sometimes, is the president going to sign off? Is it going to pass Senate? Can we get everybody else together to pool our money together? We'll have to wait and see.
Hey, John.
Go ahead.
That previous slide, you said European space agencies.
Yeah.
How many European countries have space programs?
What they do, they combine their efforts. I think it was like 15 or 17, I'm shooting off the top of my head. And they have, a European Space Agency where all these countries that want to be involved in space exploration, get involved. Headquarters is in Paris for that. And I don't have them all memorized, but there's several European countries that join forces together, so they have their own space agency. Now, some months ago, we're talking about, we're going to land back on the moon. Lockheed Martin came up with a prototype drawing and artwork for a lander. Whether we see that or not, then they all come about. Well, I'm sure Lockheed Martin, just for the heck of it's not going to be even doing artwork. They have proposed plans and so forth for a landing vehicle. Go ahead. In going to Mars, we have deep space transport. Our target is 2033. For for a couple of years, it was 2036, so it got bumped up by 3 years. A larger size craft to go to Mars. And we'll see, if this happens, but, they're holding true and everybody's, talking about, hey, we're going to go to Mars and all this type of stuff. But that's just, an artist's conception of what it's going to look like. Go ahead, Jones. Into here, this is kind of the insides, and this picture is not all that old. What they're doing for extra radiation protection from solar storms, solar winds and so forth, they have their sleeping quarters here. Looks like tall and skinny. When you're up in space, because you're in microgravity. Microgravity, how would you put it? Let's see, everything, a tree, a house, whatever, a pencil, it has some type of gravity. But instead of using long decimal pointed figures, we just say microgravity. It's a lot easier versus, well, the Earth as a base has 100% gravity. The Moon is 16.6, Mars is 38, Pluto 7, Jupiter's 240% gravity. It's easier just to use the term microgravity. But they turn their sleeping compartments, into an extra protection area from radiation. Why not? Because a solar storm could be hitting at night when they're sleeping. Turn that into it. And then they have an exercise, a hygiene area, and a storage area for them. You know, and I was talking about before, you know, and when you're in space, you're not laying on a mattress. It doesn't matter how you sleep. So usually, like if you're on the International Space Station right now, you're strapped to a wall with like about 3 straps. They use a good old-fashioned sleeping bag, and that's how they sleep, because it doesn't matter if you're standing up or laying down. Go ahead, Charles. Now, I talked about spying before. I slipped this in. This is one of the best examples of spying or espionage that I've run across. The engineering paperwork for our space shuttle was not marked top secret. So you look at these 2 space shuttles. We have the Columbia and the Russian space shuttle Bruan. They look almost dead the same, don't they? Oh. What the Russians did, you know, and I'm putting this together from a couple different sources. All they had to do was walk into 3 different government offices, and they were able to get the plans free and easy. It really wasn't spying for them. And they were able to build their own space shuttles. Now, the CIA around this time had figured out that they had grabbed a hold of this information. The last missing link was the thermal tiles on the outer shell of the space shuttles. So the CIA figured out that they grabbed that stuff. Now, back at NASA and who's ever building it and so forth, they were having trouble coming up with a concoction that would have the thermal tiles stay safely on there in extreme high heat. After many attempts, they gave up. One of the workers went to the hardware store and bought the sealant that they use, or the adhesive that they use, to put on bathroom tiles. That seemed to work. Believe it or not, just going over to Lowe's or whatever, that seemed to work. But now the CIA says, put out a fudge formula so the Russians can grab it. So, go back up. All right, you know, they had 1 unmanned test flight, 8 tiles fell off. Doesn't seem like that much of 38,000 tiles on there, but when you're re-entering, you're hitting our atmosphere, friction, and a lot of heat. And reading between the lines, they actually had 2 space shuttles that they built. They never used them. They put them in a storage building at the Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Then I think it was in the early 90s, they never did anything with them. The building collapsed and they got 2 space shuttles that are in partial rubble right now. And still they'll probably never do anything with that. And maybe they got ticked off that they figure out that we gave them a different formula and all this type of stuff after they built these things. And listen, this isn't spying. We basically just hand the information because it wasn't stamped top secret. Go on, Charles. You know, if we're going to Mars, the biggest obstacles we could run into, is radiation and gravity. Gravity changes is the real, a big problem to overcome. We need the next Tesla, the next Einstein, or the next Werner von Braun to invent artificial gravity to make this all workable. And there hadn't been too much, progress that I've seen. We have done tests with vehicles with artificial gravity, but they put them too wildly out of control. And it didn't work, and they hadn't been working too much on it. Go on, Charles. Here on Earth, as far as radiation protection, we have the magnetic field, which does a very, very good job of protecting us here on Earth from radiation. When you're on the Moon and Mars, they have magnetic fields, but they're spotty and inconsistent, and they don't protect you that much from radiation. When you're traveling in space, solar winds, solar storms, you can all be affected by the amount of radiation you can run into if you're an astronaut. Go ahead. One thing, we're traveling to the Moon or even Mars, they found out that lava tubes from old volcanoes are a good source, safe source, and protection from radiation. After the lava goes through and time goes on, it'll create a rock formation called basalt. Basalt looks like a rock with looks like a piece of Swiss cheese with a bunch of holes in it, but provides good protection. maybe sometime down the road we can do something with that. This was not a Moon or Mars lava tube. I think this is from, go back up, from Kilauea. But it was just a good shot with good lighting and so forth with it. Any Moon or Mars shot you see of a lava tube is just far away, an external hole. And lava tubes have, some problems with, just because you see a lava tube doesn't mean it's all nice and clear and cleaned out and the pathway down to it's all clear. There was some work to be done if you were going to utilize a lava tube. Go ahead, Charles. Now here we have 3 cosmonauts or astronauts, whatever, coming back from the International Space Station on a cold, wintry day. As you may notice here, they're not standing up, they're on stretchers. Why is that? Because you're in a microgravity environment, you'd lose your sense of balance. You can't walk, you have to relearn how to walk again. Each astronaut, after they come back from being at International Space Station for 6 months, has to go through 30 days worth of therapy to try to get back to normal. Now the next picture here, there's a lady, Samantha looks a lot happier, sitting in her wheelchair there, great smile. But some of the things that happen, your walking coordination balance is off. You can't walk. Change in blood pressure causes dizziness. Fluids in your head don't keep taste buds the same. Loss of bone density, 1% a month. Keep in mind, osteoporosis, from what a doctor told me, sets in after about 10% on that. So if you're on some long journey, like going to Mars or a long time up in space, the bone density loss, it can be problems. Yes, they try to exercise to offset it, but all they're doing is building muscle around it, not really strengthening the bones. Higher chances of vision change because of pressure in the eyeball. Weight added back to, if you come back down to Earth, weight added back to your tongue and lips can affect your speech. You're used to a microgravity environment. Now you have 100% tug of gravity on your tongue now. You'll be talking blah, 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 blah. Then Scott Kelly, 340 days on the International Space Station. Some of you might remember this. He came back, this was done in 2016. His vertebrae in his back stretched out 2 inches because he doesn't have that pull of 100% gravity on him. Yes, did that 2 inches reside? Yes, it did. But still, there's the other problem. Scott Kelly, after his 340 days up in space, had to spend, I think, at least a year in therapy to try to come back to somewhat being normal. Go ahead there. Okay, the 2 astronaut and a cosmonaut that spent 340 days on the International Space Station were Scott Kelly. He's got a twin, Mark Kelly. I think Mark Kelly's running for government office. I think I saw on the news. And Mikhail Koryenko. That was March 2015 to March 1st, 2016. They are working right now on a report that goes over all the medical problems and so forth after they've come back down to Earth. Hopefully that'll be made available.
That's okay. I was just going to ask you, do most of the Russian cosmonauts know how to speak English?
It works the other way around because, we go to Kazakhstan, to the Cosmodrome, and they're in control. We have to know, partial Russian. Okay. It's the other way around because they're in control. But hopefully soon that's going to change around, because of what we got coming up. But interesting to see what recommendations that they may make once that study is done. Go ahead, Charles. One thing, if you're going to Mars, Earth runs kind of like a nice circular orbit, and to where Mars is a big elliptical orbit, 687 days, to get around. So timing when you launch a vehicle to go to Mars, whether it's the InSight Lander or Rover 2020, you have to be, in sync. Every 26 months, it's ideal for a launch to where the distances aren't that great. Don't ask me about Mars time. Mars time is different. It's 24 hours, 40 minutes. If you want to boggle your mind trying to keep up with that, it's not worth it. But like here, I'm going to go through just a rundown of the gravity that your body would go through on a trip to Mars. Now I'm putting in there a 9-month journey. It could be shortened, but it would lengthen this stay on Mars to hit that 26-month cycle. Let's say like the InSight lander, which was on the news recently, that landed I think November 26th, the Monday after Thanksgiving. That made it there in 6 months and 2 weeks. A smaller craft. They anticipate taking a larger craft. They may cut that time down. But we as humans, we're used to 100% gravity ever since man walked the earth. Then you're in a microgravity environment for 9 months. Then you're at 38% gravity on Mars, and then travel back to microgravity, and then back to Earth to 100% gravity. This can do havoc on your system. Gosh, I'm reading up on Scott Kelly, some of the other things. When he came back down to Earth, you had the 2-inch stretches of vertebrae, maybe a lot of bone density loss. He was in tremendous amounts of pain. I don't know Scott Kelly from the Man in the Moon, but I have talked to people on the phone that have seen him face to face and talked to him. And he said, it seemed like every bone and joint in his body was just in severe pain after coming back. And this is why, on TV and the movies, they assume artificial gravity. We need some smart, maybe your grandkids or something like that. Hey, figure out a way to come up with artificial gravity, and that would help, distant, space travel immensely. Go ahead, Charles. What else? And Scott Kelly also said he's back on Earth. Pressure on his skin, he breaks out in hives. Feels like he has the flu and nauseated, but doesn't vomit. Then he'd be coming back home, and they'd be rehabbing close to his house, and he'd be stumbling and falling and doesn't look good in front of his family and so forth. Wasn't quite pleasant. Wernher von Braun, even back in the early 60s, had visualized a space station, and he was smart enough at the time to say, hey, we need gravity. He could, in his design, he could only come up with about 33% gravity. And just a picture that maybe a lot of you have seen, I just put it in there, President Kennedy, Wernher von Braun, November 16th, 1963, at Cape Canaveral, and then unfortunately 6 days later he was assassinated. Go ahead. Oh, an exploration mission to Mars, 2033. And when I'm sitting there looking for pictures and so forth, I ran across my favorite Martian. I said, I got to put that in there, because when you're a little kid, I remember that show. It was pretty neat.
Warning, Will
Yeah.
Robinson, warning.
That was
Lost in Space.
Lost in Space.
Oh, sorry about that.
But like Mars, very rocky. Great solar, sometimes windstorms and dust storms and all that. And by the way, it's been talked about the Opportunity rover, that got caught up in, dust storms and so forth, and it's been there for 14 years. Finally, yesterday, they just called it quits, and they're not going to bother with it. The only other rover we have there is Curiosity, which is nuclear power and not solar power. And they'll have another rover going up in 2020 to Mars. Go ahead, Charles. Here's something you want to think about. Should we technology do our exploring, or is it inbred in us, to be the next Columbus or whatever, to go out and saying we have to go there ourselves rather than like technology, go do it ourselves. And after you read about gravity and what it does to the body and these long-term missions, some of these missions, we have no way to test going to Mars for 26 months, and the gravity changes back and forth. There's no way to test for that right now. But it's something coming up. InSight lander I just talked about, it's been there, and the next one coming up, Rover 2020. Is it worth it to go there, or do we let technology do it? Even the Rover 2020 will have like a drone helicopter on there to go buzz around and look. Go ahead. All right, now, the biggest change coming up, we'll change things around. We have the Commercial Crew Flight Program, where SpaceX and Boeing are going to take first uncrewed up to the International Space Station and then come back down. SpaceX was supposed to go in January, but what happened in January? Government shutdown. Even though it's SpaceX, there's going to be government people involved, so the dates got bumped out. March 2nd, they'll go up there, and then Boeing sometime in April, this year, they'll go up there, no crew. And then in the summertime, they will take a crew. SpaceX goes first, and then Boeing. I remember the last time, July 8th, 2011 was the last time the space shuttle took off from there. Now, if this changes around to where, hey, we're taking the astronauts up there and not paying the Russians a small fortune to do this, and their price tag, I don't even want to say, it's a lot. We must be financing the whole space program. Maybe now the Russians will have to learn some English coming up. But SpaceX, they'll be using the Kennedy Space Center to launch. They lease Launch Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center and Launch Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral. Go ahead, Charles. And recently, SpaceX built a walkway on 39A for the astronauts to go out there. I think there was one before, but it got too old and decrepit. This was built, sometime 5-6 months ago or whatever. They built that. Got to have a nice walkway for the astronauts, good TV cameras and all that stuff. This is going to change the thing, but you just want to make aware of it. I'm not here to be the Grim Reaper or whatever. Talk about solar storms. Solar storms, there have been 17 recorded since we've had the technology on the planet to observe solar storms. March 3rd, 1989, up in Quebec, solar storm, coming to Earth took 3.5 days to get here. Now I know NASA and the Air Force have people continually around the clock looking at computer screens through our various technologies looking for solar storms coming at us. Then the worst one, a major solar storm in 1859 called the Carrington event, named after the man that had visualized this. Go back up, Charles. This arrived in 17 hours. Now, this is big, fast moving. What emits in a solar storm, they use the term plasma. But we think of plasma, we think of blood. But it's ionized gas that comes there. And what it will do, now let's say back in 1859, even though this is a major solar storm, it affected the telegraph. Imagine the telegraph operator sitting at a wooden desk with his Morse key, the little thing that taps it out. It's sitting on wood, and he's got a bunch of papers around there. Boom, on fire, the whole thing went on fire. That was really the only thing electrical at the time, and the telegraph was worldwide at this time. We even had a transatlantic cable at this time. But just keep in mind, the plan is, and I'll stop. Now, if they see a major solar storm coming at us, NASA and the Air Force will call the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They're going to go to the power companies and say, cut the power, if they feel across the whole United States. Now, can you survive 2 or 3 days if that ever happens? And solar storms happen every 150 years. They've studied ice cores up in Greenland and the Antarctic. In 1859 is the last one. You tack on 150 years, that means we're overdue. This may happen, it may not, but history says it will happen. And how long will they cut the power for? 2-3 days? I was on vacation. We go down to St. Augustine. We stay in the same complex. A couple from Quebec were there, and I asked them, sometimes it's hard, how long does it take to recoup from this stuff? And I asked him if he remembered this solar storm hitting in the power outage. He couldn't remember. All he could bring up was in 1998, they had a big ice storm, and he was without power 2.5 weeks. And I couldn't imagine no electricity for 2.5 weeks, and that's everywhere. I think my time is up. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're fine, you're fine. Time's up, but yeah, you're fine. Any questions for him real quick, like? Is it true someone on the Mars rover, I've read someone, the hubcaps were stolen? Thank you very much. It's certainly a pleasure to have you here, and been to a lot of presentations, and I don't know that I've seen anywhere someone knows as much information as as our speaker does. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. All right, at this time, I'm going to ask Van if he would to let's have a drawing for our Polio Plus.
Yeah, today we raised $64, $32 to the winner, and $32 to the Eradication Polio Plus campaign. Larry,
Lucky
pick me a
number
winner.
is 445, the last three.
Okay, Larry has given me the ticket. Now, of course, my eyesight ain't very good, so, all right, are we ready? The last numbers are 4449.
Oh, wow.
What? Okay.
Congratulations.
Take your wife
donate,
out.
No, I can't accept. No, use it for something else.
How about we donate it right back to the polio?
Okay. Where do we stand on our tickets? Do you know?
John's got a couple that just went in.
I just put 3 more in. I don't know if the total.
You're standing on your tickets. Okay. Anyway, don't forget, we need
Don't know
to
what the
fill this
total
thing
is.
up and keep selling tickets because it works good for us. And where's Jim? He vacating somewhere?
Jim is on vacation for 2 weeks, so
coming back today.
he employed myself and Larry Aiken to
Right.
do the duties this time. So Dan, I'm going to ask, now, you don't have a stake in this, you can't win. So, but if you will come over here, please, and pull a ticket out. We do a weekly $100 raffle drawing, and then we resubmit the ticket to go back in. So if you'll go ahead and grab a ticket, we'll find out who wins for this week.
Fred
Von Cannon?
Von Cannon.
Yep, Fred Von Cannon is sold by Robert Gillen. And he's the winner for this week, so congratulations to him. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Andy.
Okay.
Would Fred want to donate it back?
Robert said, I'll take that under advisement. Ed, since your guest speaker was the winner of the small raffle drawing, would you stand and let's all stand and he'll lead us in the four-way test and then our pledge to our flag.
Four-way test of things we think, say, or do. First is the
truth. It is very long concern. Will it build better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. John, appreciate it.